Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Realeyes The World Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the illusion of time. So, the illusion of time, sure enough, time is a thing. It's not a physical thing. Um, it's not necessarily something we will say is made up. But more so our perception and understanding of time. That's where us as humans can get a little delusional, so to say, about the whole subject. So, time itself, I tried to Google the origins of time. There's so much, I'll just say, words around it. And apparently the definition of or the origins of at least where 1 second comes from has transformed over the years. So in short, we all know what time is. The whole world is built around time. You got to be somewhere at 9 o'clock. You got to do this at 10 o'clock. Kids get out of school at 3 o'clock. Whatever the case is. Um, the world has kind of became like clockwork. The way I see it, it's like the gears in a watch. The way we've structured our world around time, it's pretty much the same way a watch would work. And that, the gears spin. Each gear has its different size and number of teeth, and so it spins smaller gears, medium-sized gears, other gears of the same size. And much like that, us as humans are running around with our schedules like clockwork. We got to piece together multiple events or different things that we would like to accomplish or that we're obligated to some extent, as part of our lives, to create our lives, to essentially do what we think is important, or what we define as our life. But once you have sort of awakening, or you have that mental space to step back, and kind of look at your life, and look at the different things in your life. One of the things you'll notice is that your perception of time is a little illusional, so to say. Um, and so I say illusional because the amount of importance we put on it and how we let it essentially run our life. But all in all, time is really just a measurement. It's a measurement no different than inches, feet, temperature, um, you know, whatever else we do out there, pressure. Um, we as humans have an obsession with understanding things. And so one of the things that we've gone to explore is time. So, much like mathematics and science and physics, we have broken down this concept of time into one that we could say logically makes sense, or to the point where we feel like it makes sense logically. We have formulas and whatnot that if you know anything about math, we have there's proofing and showing origins of formulas, and showing how they relate to other formulas, and so we have that for time to an extent. Bottom line though is time is just what it is. It's no different than like a tree. It's no different from air. It's no different from water. It's no different from us as humans. It is a thing that exists. And it exists in its own sort of nature. So, again, when I say an illusion of time, we're not saying time doesn't exist, but this is the misconception that we have with time. Okay? So, now that I've pointed out that we measure time, and we have this obsession as humans with understanding things and measuring them and even to some extent trying to manipulate them. Time travel is a sci-fi topic. Been around for years, but we haven't figured it out in real life yet on how to exactly manipulate time. I'm sure there's some modern science that's figured out or has a hypothesis about time distorting in black holes and or in a vacuum or whatever the case is. But we're talking about the time that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we have this importance of time. We feel like it runs the world, but in reality, time is just it's what it is. And so, when we say it's 4 o'clock, I gotta be somewhere. You gotta think back in prehistoric times, maybe caveman times. These guys didn't measure time to the point where they're like they have it on their wrists. They're like, oh, 4 o'clock, I gotta go. Time used to be looked at as, where's the sun at? Okay, the sun is about halfway, the day is about halfway over because the sun is directly above our head. Or when the sun's about to set, we know it's about to be nighttime. And so they would structure their days based on, okay, I got this amount of daylight left. Maybe they hunt at night and they gotta wait till the sun goes down before they can go hunting. Various different things, but that's how time used to be perceived. And of course, then they came up with sundials or whatnot, and I'm sure they got a little bit more fancy than using it for hunting methods and whatnot. They could. I'm sure they did like rituals. I'm thinking of like some ancient Mayan times, where they did have a sundial, and maybe at a certain point of the sundial, it's like, all right, let's do our ritual for the day. And that's how time has gone on for us to understand seasons and how the earth revolves around the sun, essentially. The axis of the earth, and where we're at in our Milky Way galaxy. Days get longer and shorter depending on where we're at as we revolve around the sun. The earth itself spins. That's how we have day and night, within 24-hour cycles, at least for most places on the world or on the earth. But yeah, that's all time is. Now, us as humans, when we look at time itself, or when we let our life run by time, we're essentially taking ourselves out of the present. Okay, and so this is where anxiety and regrets and maybe even depression start to come in. Because with having regrets or anything that has to do with the past, you are foregoing the moment in front of you, and within your mind mentally, and then you're looking or reflecting or thinking about something that has happened. Okay, so that puts your mind in the state of the past. And so when you're thinking of the past, it's almost like you're replaying the scenario in your head. I'm sure a lot of us have done something or said something, and moments to months or days or years later, still feel like you could have did it differently. Um, there could be moments where you didn't fully think out what you said and you said something offensive, and instantly you're replaying the scenario in your head. Oof, I wish I had said that differently, da 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 da. And you take yourself out of that present moment. Um, for me, I do racing, at least autocross. It's not professional racing, it's amateur level racing. Kind of do it on your own. But I realized when I had this awakening that one of my issues with trying to go faster is that, and so let me explain, I guess, autocross for a second. Autocross is set up in a big parking lot, like a stadium parking lot, and they set up cones. And so you go around these cones to try and complete the course as fast as you can. And so you compete against other people. And so it's like a small racetrack, or even like a go kart track, in a parking lot. And if you hit a cone, that adds 2 seconds to your time, at least for most organizations that do this sport. And so at the same time, at driving dynamics, there's a shortest distance around the course, so to say. There's different ways to take turns, and stuff where you can make up time. And so, obviously, if you don't have full control of the car and you mess up on a turn, you lose time. Or if you hit a cone, you just got 2 seconds added to your time. And one of the things I realized that was a kind of mental block or competitive disadvantage for myself was, as I'm going around the course, if I messed up or if I hit a cone, I would start thinking about that rather than driving the rest of the course. And so, one mistake leads into two or three more before I set my mind back on what I'm doing. And so that's just one example of how, when you think of the past, you forego the present moment. And so in racing, if you mess up, and not a fatal or critical mess up, you're not like crashing your car, but just messing up as far as performing the best that you can or should, it will it will you kind of make note of it mentally. But if you instantly replay it in your head, oh, I should have did this differently, or whatever you might think of in the moment, then you start to again forego what's in front of you. So in racing, all the turns come up one after the other. You got to be ready for each one. And if you mess one up and the next one's coming up and you're not thinking about it, what do you think happens? Essentially, you're bound to mess up the next one. And so that was one of the things I had realized with racing and having my awakening, and that when you think of the past in any capacity, it foregoes the present moment. The same can be said for anxieties or worrying about the future. Um, Once you start thinking or projecting yourself into the future, you forego the present moment. And this is where all this be here now comes from, be present. It's essentially about anchoring your mind in the moment of what's in front of you. So if you're worried about, what's going to happen with coronavirus, for example, you're foregoing what's the actual current state of life in front of you, which, most of us should be at home at least, or shelter in home. Some states are locked down, quarantined. Some countries you can't even leave the house, or you can only leave the house on certain days. When you start worrying about something that happens in the future, you forego what's in front of you. So, for example, if you're home with your family, but you're so worried about what's going to happen next with coronavirus, you're missing precious time with your family because you've put your mind in a mental state that's not in the present moment. You may have noticed, or maybe you haven't, but I'll point it out. But if you ever feel irritated, sometimes that's because you're in a state of thought. And, with regrets and anxieties, you're so busy playing the scenario out in your head where you feel like you're doing something mentally, and if somebody interrupts you, you're like, hey, you have an attitude with them, or you don't want to engage with them, and you make it known that I don't want to talk right now. I'm busy thinking of something in my head, whereas ignoring everything that's in front of you. I've noticed this with myself, whether I was replaying the past or worrying about the future. I could be lost in thought, and my wife or kids ask me something or want to play with me, or whatever it is that requires my attention, and I would deny the moment or opportunity, or be irrational, like mad or irritated or rude, because they were taking my mind out of my projection, whether it was the past or future, and bringing it to the present when I felt mentally occupied with that thought. And so, that's kind of how anxieties play out. If you have some kind of phobia or anything to that effect, where you project something that hasn't happened, and you get so overwhelmed in thought about it that you create a fear. For example, I saw somebody or something on Instagram about someone with OCD and the coronavirus, and they were already OCD about cleaning their house before the whole pandemic, and now they are cleaning their house even more. I'm talking about Lysols and disinfectants on countertops, light switches. But now they're doing it even more than before, even though they haven't left the house. Nobody else has entered the house. But they're compulsively cleaning more because they have that fear of germs. And so, when you have an anxiety, I don't want to get sick, and you replay the scenario in your head, you worry about it, you're taking yourself out of what's the actual reality in front of you. If you're sheltered in your house or quarantined or locked down, especially if nobody else has came in, you haven't left the house, why is there a need to clean more? And I understand having OCD, but with a pandemic outside of your house and nothing else foreign has entered your house, why would you compulsively clean more? And that's because you put yourself out of the present moment and into worrying about something that could happen. It's not guaranteed to happen, yet you're projecting your future self in a different time, and I guess playing out a scenario that hasn't happened. And in reality, you're not sick in the present moment. And that's not to say you shouldn't plan or you shouldn't worry about certain things, but there's a limit and a kind of a knowing, an understanding of what's real and what's not. Ideas of the past and the future are not real. Yeah, they might have happened historically. Maybe you even have a scar or lost a limb as a result that you have evidence that it happened. But the very thought of it is not real. That's something that lives in your mind. Um, the present moment is all that's really is ever going to be real. You start thinking about the past, it's just a thought. You start thinking about the future, it's just a thought. Notice I said thinking about. That means you're creating thoughts about, you're thinking, you're putting your mind into a state of pondering or reflecting on something that's already happened or hasn't happened. The actual fact is that those are thoughts, and what's in front of you is reality. You can touch, taste, see, hear, smell what's in front of you. You can't do none of that when you think of the past. You can't do none of that when you think of the future. So what's reality? What's the illusion? Right? The illusion is past and future. That's the illusion of time there. The reality, the reality of time is the present moment. And yes, our lives go from moment to moment, no matter how granular you want to break that down or how you want to divide it. Childhood years, teenage years, adulthood. What else? History breaks it down into ages: the golden age, information technology age, industrial age. You can call it what you want, but it's going to be harder to define in the present moment unless like for example, they label generations: millennials, Gen X, Boomer. You can kind of define yourself that label in present time, but that's all it is, a label. It doesn't actually affect you in reality and what's going on. So yeah, I hope that kind of makes it clear of where this illusion, how time can be illusional. I myself, I I was lost in it for quite a while. I don't know how long exactly, but I had plenty of regrets. Oh, I should have did this. Oh, I should have did that. Replaying scenarios. Even I had social anxiety. Oh, maybe I should have said hi. Maybe I should have talked about this. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. They probably think I'm dumb. And then it's the same thing with social anxiety. Oh, you want to go to a party? No, they might think of me badly. They might say this about me. They might not like me. All this projection of not being present, just it. I hope I build the picture here to help people realize if they suffered from any of these types of issues in a similar manner, that the past has already happened. There's nothing we can ever do about it. What you do in the present moment makes the difference. If you accidentally hit somebody, instead of replaying, oh, I shouldn't have got angry and hit him, or I should have been more careful not to hit anybody, whatever the case is, be present, apologize, help the person. That's what matters. Actions are louder than words, and especially your own thoughts. And then, with the future, just don't worry about the future, because the future can result in infinite different ways. Yeah, there may be some repeatable scenarios, like especially with like chemistry. You mix hydrogen and oxygen, you get water. Yes, we know that. That's a fact. Um, you're not necessarily predicting the future when you do that. That's a simple fact. But future, as in, oh, what's going to happen if I do this, or what's going to happen if I leave the house today? You shouldn't do that either, because no matter how precautious you are, I learned this myself, and even with my own plans, I can't even plan anything anymore, because I know I might change my mind, or have a change of heart, or something else might come up to where my plans don't follow through. And that's perfectly fine. You can't get caught up in the time factor and lose yourself in the moment, because the present moment is all we ever have. You won't ever possess the future moment, because once you get there, it's no longer the future, right? And then after you get there, there's more future. You'll never catch it. It's like chasing a dog chasing its tail. Although the dog does catch the tail, it might not be a good example, but you can just imagine the running around in circles of somebody just trying to catch the future. And it's okay. Here you go. It's like having a carrot on, like a carrot on top of a horse, where the horse is always trying to get the carrot, and so it's forever walking forward, right? It'll never catch it, because one step forward and the carrot goes one step forward. That's the future. And then the past, again, the past is already, it's gone. That moment has moved on. If you The longer you hold on to it, the worse you put your mind in that kind of state. And that's how people have traumas. In some cases, their fears and phobias are based on something that happened, which is sort of the same thing as having trauma, a traumatic experience. And you can't base your present moment or the future off of that necessarily. Again, this if it's something like a fact, you put hydrogen and oxygen together, you get water. But for example, like a rape victim, not every guy is going to be a possible rapist, and to have that fear of anybody in such a broad sense, is just that's living in anxiety based on something that happened in the past, where that's not necessarily a fact that you can rely on. And sure, some people get burned enough times to where they truly believe, something will almost always happen based on their experience. But life in general is just the learning experience. So whether you learn from your mistakes and keep an open mind, or practice ignorance and ignore the fact and based on your experience, is certainly up to you. But one does need to understand that getting lost and bringing these things in from different times that are just simply thoughts, can hinder your present experience. you know. Um, Another thing I wanted to point out with time is, have if you guys have ever noticed, I don't get this very much at all anymore, if at all. But when you're bored, you feel like time is passing slowly, and then when you're doing something fun, you feel like time just goes by quickly. That's essentially being present. Um, so when you look at things as being bored, it's because your mind, caught in the illusion of time, you feel like you could be doing something else. Oh, I could be, if this pandemic wasn't happening, I could be racing, I could be playing sports, I could be doing something else. I could be placing myself mentally elsewhere, and because I'm not doing that stuff, I'm just sitting and watching this clock, which is really a time measuring device to tell me the current time of the day. It's not necessarily there to tell you an hour has passed and you've done nothing. That's your own use of that measuring device. That's no different from somebody measuring with the tape measure the width of the table versus where they place it on the table, is whether they're measuring it properly or not. Whether you're using your time efficiently and watching that clock or not, same thing. It's all how the user uses it. And so when you're bored, you're not being present because you're not doing what you want. And if you really want to do something, get up and do it. If you have constraints, be creative. A lot of people turn to like racing right now. Even the professionals have turned to racing simulator video games. So they want to race, they can fire up their PC or console and do it there. That's one way of being creative. I'm sure it's not the same for other sports. With at least with the racing video games, you have a steering wheel, gas pedal, and all that. But I'm sure if you play NFL or football, pressing X on the controller is not necessarily the same as throwing a football. But get creative. Throw the football in the house with another person, or just throw it at a target. Whatever you might want to do, just do it. And don't project time as passing and you're not getting anything accomplished, or you're not doing what you want to do, because that's what boredom is. You're waiting. You're waiting for something and you're not taking action to do it. You're caught in the illusion of time, and it's almost like the sense of entitlement that some people run around with, and that, I should get this job because I have a college degree. But it doesn't work like that. You should get this job because you qualify, or you meet certain criteria, or the hiring manager and you really click together, and that whatever the case is. But if you approach that with entitlement, go in there with the nasty attitude, or unprepared, and not show the employer that you qualify for the job, that's akin to you sitting around like, oh, I wanna be a millionaire. And if you don't do anything, you'll never get $1,000,000, because you feel entitled to it. You feel bored. You feel like it should just land on your plate. No action taken. Even if you played a lottery, you have to at least get up and go buy the ticket. That's some kind of action. And yeah, if you win, okay, boom. There's different ways to get millions of dollars. That just so happens to be one of the easiest random ways to get $1 million. But some action was taken. If you sat in the house waiting for something to happen, you didn't go out and buy the lottery ticket, you'll never have a chance to win that $1 million. That's what boredom is. That's what being caught in the illusion of time and waiting is. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you might recall moments where you were having fun, or maybe went on a vacation and time went by like that. And then, or whatever you might be doing, and you ask yourself, oh, where did time go? You know, that's because you were living every moment or most of the moments of that time period presently. You know, most people go on vacation, they don't worry about what happened at work yesterday or what they might have turned in and what might come back from it. Or they don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow or what's the boss going to surprise you with next week. When they're on vacation, work is out of, like, for most people at least, and should be. Work shouldn't be of any preoccupation when you're on vacation. And so then you're spending every moment as if it's your last, or as you have wanted but you haven't been able to because of work. And you're enjoying it. Your five gauges are, your five senses are engaged. You know, you're eating food, the smell, the taste. You're at the beach. You feel the sand on your feet. You feel the water, the waves. You smell the suntan lotion. You see the pleasant view. Any of your five senses, it brings you into the present moment. And only when you take yourself out of the present moment, you know, at the end of your vacation, and you look back, oh wow, 6 days already passed. Where did time go? Now you took yourself out of the present moment and you're creating these illusional thoughts of, I didn't have enough. You know, or it, essentially you're craving for more. That's kind of how our brains work, and create other issues for us. And that, you know, we get a dopamine rush, we get a dopamine release, we have we enjoy ourselves to the point where we want more of it. We want to recreate that feeling every moment, every day. But you can do that when you don't think of time and you just enjoy every moment. And sure, you know, it's harder to do for some moments than others. You know, some might be dull, like work, especially if you work somewhere where you don't want to, or you're doing something that you don't want to. But when you bring yourself to the present moment, you know, whether you would consider it fun or not, you should just stop labeling it and enjoy that life in front of you. When you start, again, replaying what just happened, and you're like, oh, where did time go? It kind of loses its novelty. You know, all of a sudden your fun vacation will become depressing. Because now you're anticipating, tomorrow I go back to work, or tomorrow or the next couple of days we're not going to be here at Cancun or whatever island you might go to, vacation resort. Now you're taking yourself out of the present moment because you're reflecting on the past and you're anticipating the future, and not living the moment. Nothing is forever. And that's something I've covered in another podcast, the impermanence of everything. And that's a part of life. Vacations aren't forever. People aren't forever. Money is not forever. Time is not forever. You have to piece all these different concepts together, and just have that understanding of life. And sure, it might be easier said than done, but it's a practice. And that's one of the things where we have to kind of keep our minds clean. um where you start to deal with temptations, sensual things that engage you sensually, whether like you have a favorite food because every time you eat it, you know what to expect. And certain foods with certain people give a different sensual experience. So that's why you have a favorite food sometimes. Um, and just knowing those things and being aware of those things and how they, if you're craving it, you're taking yourself out of the present moment because you're imagining a slice of pizza in your mouth and the dopamine rush that you would get. Sure, you might not be aware that that's what's happening in your brain, that when you eat that cheese, the greasy cheese, the crusty crust, all of those elements activate something in your mind. So not necessarily, this isn't just limited to food, but any sensual pleasure, you have to be aware of that, because especially if you start daydreaming about it, takes you out of your present moment. Um, I've noticed this with food. Um, Myself, I used to be overweight because I obviously have some kind of obsession with food, to the point where I would overindulge every time I eat. That's how I was overweight. Um, and so just anticipating what I'm going to eat for lunch, dinner, next week, so on. It takes me out of the present moment, to where I'm not paying attention to what's in front of me. And then, you could get, like I said, by the example earlier, where you get irritated that somebody interrupts your thought. Like, my kid wants to play Minecraft with me or some game. And I'm like, oh no, I don't have time because I'm thinking about what's going to be for lunch, what's going to be for dinner, when really I should be anchored in the present moment and enjoying life as it unfolds. And sure, life unfolds in different ways, and sometimes ways that are less desirable or that we don't want, but that's life. If a comet was to strike the earth, there's nothing, no matter how we perceive it, that's going to change it. It just happens. And so everything in life, although that's not as drastic of an occurrence, should be approached the same way. Okay, you got fired. You weren't performing good enough. Okay, so be it. You get in a car accident. So be it. You win the lottery. So be it. This isn't just for the things you don't want, but the things you want as well. Because, you don't know what's going to happen. Say you become a millionaire. You don't know if that's essentially your tombstone, because you go and binge on drugs or alcohol and overdose yourself. There are things that could happen in the future to where we can't necessarily say that in the present moment it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sure, $1 million will put you in a good financial position, but what you do with it, like I said, some celebrities go out and binge on drugs or whatever and overdose. And so it was like that money was actually a curse. But you don't know that in the present moment. And that's why you can't classify anything in the present moment. For example, if you get fired, and you go find another job that leads you into a life of happiness, you getting caught up on being fired initially, perceiving it as bad, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Like I said, it could lead into a better life. Or, it could go into a darker life. You don't know. But you, with the illusion of time, you can't even label events because you don't know. Nobody knows. Life unfolds in different ways. That's how people say, "Oh, life just life is funny sometimes because of the irony, the ironic events that could happen." But that's how life is in general. Life is funny. Things that are funny usually make us laugh and bring joy and happiness. Therefore, no matter how life unfolds before you, it should always be funny. It should always be happiness. It should always be joyful. Don't get caught up in the illusion of time, whether you're mentally caught up on it or you're projecting yourself or in events into the future about it. Just understand that time is time. When you notice you lose track of time, you're doing it right. That's when you're living right. But if you're watching the clock, you're not living to your fullest potential. Okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. If you have any comments, questions, additional input, feel free to submit it on whatever media you're listening to this or watching this podcast. Show some support, give some likes and follows as well. Those help the different media platforms and their algorithms kind of promote the content from within without me actually promoting or spamming stuff. We have future plans for the podcast, and like I said, this is probably one of the last few episodes that we'll do for the Enlightening series. I'm sure a lot more stuff could be discussed. If you look through the different episodes I've done, these are pretty much the biggest things that have stood out to me after having an awakening. So have a listen through those if you haven't. There's plenty of content so far, and I plan to make more. So again, the support counts as far as helping get my message out to the world. And yeah. So thanks again for listening, guys, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you.